swipe. Dopamine swipe. Follow us, likes, double tap. Now they control your life.
Welcome back, everyone, to the 817 podcast. I'm Jimmy here with EJ.
What's up,
And it has been a long few years since last Tuesday. Groundhog Day, Palm Springs, whatever movie you want to relate it to. We have just been living the same day over and over again. But as of Saturday morning, the election has been called nationally. I believe Tarrant County finished counting all of its votes on Saturday. So it looks like we are coming to the end of the line over the next week to 10 days as counties and states certify and finalize their votes. EJ, how are you feeling after this week?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot going on. I think the best way we're gonna just kind of, for you listening, we're gonna break it down. We're gonna start locally, looking at local, and then we're gonna go state, and then we're gonna go nationally. Now that it's called, a lot to process, but I guess I feel lukewarm. I feel like soggy cereal, maybe. Like it's changed, but the milk colors change, but it's still like, the it's not that good.
Is it like Cocoa Puffs where you're actually getting a different type of milk now, or is it just like Cheerios where you're stuck with plain cereal and plain milk?
Yeah, I think it's more Cheerios. It's more Cheerios for me, but we'll find out. I mean, we'll look at it, and I thought Biden and Kamala's presentation speech this weekend was pretty powerful.
Yeah, they killed it.
Yeah.
Joe Biden running out. That's a great meme now of people putting whatever music they want behind it. But at least one of the 75-year-olds in the race can run still.
And then you have and shout out Laura Lape for doing the pre episode with us. I think that actually was pretty meaningful.
Yeah.
Due to how long it took.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think what we were talking about there was really strong. But let's go ahead and get into the Tarrant County stuff and kind of take it there, right? Tarrant, we went blue after you counted all the mail-in votes, a couple thousand votes. Tarrant County went blue, so that is cool. Fort Worth is obviously super blue and surrounded by a lot of red.
Yeah, I haven't seen any stop the vote protests in Tarrant, but there were still mail-in ballots here. They were all legally cast, just like all of the votes in this election. But after a couple of days, we just started to see that gap come closer and closer. And as we got done with mail-ins and provisionals, it looks like Biden-Harris prevailed by about 1,200 votes, 1,250,
yeah, so close.
The equivalent of 0.17%. That's really cool. First time in a very long time that Tarrant has gone blue. Continues to illustrate and underscore the changing nature of this city. And I don't have the Fort Worth specific numbers in front of me. I don't know how accurately those are out right now, but Fort Worth, if you look at a map, is very blue. Tarrant is a very big county, which encompasses a number of suburbs that are very red.
Yeah.
So
and it's I don't know what you're going to say is your biggest win or loss of the Tarrant County data, but to me, it just shows we are at the beginning of making Fort Worth a place people of all backgrounds want to be. I think this is why we started this podcast. This is why we are still in the early stages of what is Fort Worth and Tarrant County going to evolve in. And that's what it just showed me. Man, there's still a lot of work to do. And not necessarily that the idea is that we need everyone to be Democrats. It's just there's definitely a divide. And like I said, I came back from Big Bend and was driving back, and I went through Midland, I went through Odessa, and went through all the red Trump wall that holds Republicans here in Texas. And to me, the clearer scare was Weatherford and that area, and coming into seeing the Trump mega store looking like a fireworks stand. And so that's Fort Worth as well. And I think that is what we do, is how do we communicate that Tarrant, that piece of Tarrant, and making people work together still.
Yeah, for sure. I think the ticket splitting is something that really stuck out to me. And not even just Democrat, Republican, but also with the third party Libertarian candidate and the Green Party candidate when it comes to senator. So John Cornyn defeated MJ in Tarrant County by about 5 points, which equated to about 41,000 votes. The Libertarian candidate, Kerry Douglas McKinnon, pulled about 6,000 more votes than Joe Jorgensen did, which third parties are really interesting, because I would typically think that third party would be even more likely to vote down ballot than other than the two major parties. But maybe that's even flawed reasoning, that if they're voting third party in one race, they are potentially more informed, or
do you also look at it as, did we have a lot of maybe Republicans who said, hey, I wasn't going to vote for Trump?
So I mean, there were, the difference between the votes that Cornyn received and Trump received are 14,000. So Cornyn got 14,000 more votes, but MJ got about 30,000 fewer votes than Biden-Harris. And so that's a really interesting split to me, of whether that is, so about 7,000 fewer votes were cast for senator than for president. So 7,000 people left president off the ballot, something that I think people were potentially anticipating this year if you were a Republican that was not pro-Trump. But then a lot of Republicans also seemingly voted for Biden-Harris and still voted for Cornyn.
What I said to you earlier was, since we're going to go local, state, and national, I want you to give me your 1 through 5, how you're feeling from 1, man, Tarrant, we crapped the bed, to 5, hey guys, I'm so proud of who we are and where we're going. I want to do that for each section, but where are you 1 through 5 for Tarrant?
I would say around 3.5. And I would say that because it will be very difficult for the Republican Party to put forth somebody that is as hated as Donald Trump in 2024. Unless maybe it was Ted Cruz. Like, I really think that he might be one of the only potential 2024 presidential candidates that could be remotely as despised as Donald Trump.
What percentage do you have of the potential of Trump coming back? I mean, he's gonna be oldest.
I think he's gonna be in prison. Like, I hope so. He has to there gets to be a reckoning now with everything that has been exposed. But the reason I say that is this split, especially related to the senator seat, does not make me optimistic that 2024 Tarrant would also go blue or go more blue. Because we're seeing that, if these 7,000 people that left president off the ballot voted at any sort of reasonable rate for a Republican, then then Tarrant is still red. So I think that this could, looking at the numbers, I think this could be a blip, depending on obviously how population moves over the next 4 years, if Fort Worth continues to grow at the rate it is, That could change that.
Yeah.
If things involving the Green New Deal and oil and gas start to change, that could change the makeup of Fort Worth and businesses here.
Yeah. Well, something that I saw someone reported in the Star Telegram was around how they think Kamala Harris and the campaign coming to Tarrant was actually a bad thing, because then it woke up a lot of Republicans and said, "Oh, snaps!
Yeah,
we got to make sure we get our asses out and vote on election day." And so I think that's interesting as well.
Yeah. My other disappointment with Tarrant is with the sheriff position.
Yes, that was mine too.
Bill Wayburn is just not good at his job. He's not a good person to represent Fort Worth and Tarrant County in any way, shape, or form. And so he beat out a very strong candidate in Vance Keys by about 6 points.
Yeah.
That was a bummer for me, because
and
Fort Worth and Tarrant County's prison system has been under scrutiny this year because of how mismanaged it is. And so with that blatantly in our faces, it seems like people just sort of went down ballot with that. And I think that might be a more accurate representation of where the city and the county stand than president or senator necessarily are.
Yeah, but he's also, I feel, a prolific character that, to me, locally, that I think maybe excites that side of people, I guess, like the people on that side. Like,
I mean, he talks the way Trump does.
Yeah, Beth also won. So,
and they spent, I mean, Beth Van Dyne spent a lot of money. I have seen so many, like, Candace Valenzuela is Satan TV ads over the last month. Which she is obviously not. But I mean, Beth Van Dyne really strongly carried Tarrant.
Yeah, those two were the ones like, dang, they waxed it. That was real.
So that's why I say 3.5. Really exciting to see it happen. But digging into the numbers, it feels like more of a blip unless Democrats can just really strongly campaign in Tarrant and Texas in 22 and 24. What would you say, 1 to 5?
Yeah, I would go like 2, 1.8. I mean, and my more thing is because, and I look at it from an optimistic, this is why we're here. This is why we made this podcast. This is why we're excited for it, because we're looking at Tarrant in decades instead of days. We're looking at it, what this place can be long term. But it's just still showing the old kind of Fort Worth garden culture.
Yeah.
Which, and to me, it's people, even at the state level, they don't see us as the big 5. Right. We're it's the big blue 4.
Yeah.
And then we're they see us as a suburb, and because we behave as a suburb, as a county.
I'm not on TikTok, but I saw a number of TikToks cross over to Twitter around Tarrant County and Texas, and most of them were the other big cities talking to each other, and Fort Worth was not included.
Correct.
Even El Paso got included before Tarrant County and Fort Worth.
Yeah, and so that's to me like the part that I'm very like, that kind of respect, I guess. Which I guess is good to kind of then go into like the state level, I guess, is like, I just think we're a Republican county still. That's what I guess it's just saying. It's like if this wasn't a full move to being in the big 5, it was more of, we are the metropolitan of the entire state of Texas.
Yeah. It was sort of like that's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, clearly, like when we look hyper local at Fort Worth, which is maybe more relevant for next year's elections with mayor and city council positions. Yeah, Fort Worth could go very blue in that sense, and it showed that it is very blue. But as a county, we might not be blue for long.
But that's I think the other thing we talked about, right? The difference is who's going to stay stickier? The people who came out and voted because they didn't like Trump, and then the Trumpers who voted because of Trump. I think that's the mayor election, the local election is going to be interesting around that. But yeah, statewide, I mean, if I had a rank of the 1 through 5, which one I'm least happy with, it's the state.
I mean, we got demolished.
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
took a big zero.
Everybody just had the floor wiped with them.
Yeah.
And part of it might have been what you were just saying with them coming to Texas. Like, that riled people up. And we clearly saw it with them, trying to run Kamala Harris's bus off the road.
Yeah.
Like, how unacceptable and what despicable behavior there. But I mean, Corn and Hagar was not close.
Yeah.
There was never a question of the presidency being close. And then when we look at the Texas House seats, we didn't flip anything.
Yeah. Zero. And to me, this just shows the whole talk, the whole conversation around, when people go out and vote, we had record shattering voting turnout across the country. And what it just opens it was a sobering reality to people like us, who I say we're very progressive, we're very more modern, we're younger, and we felt like there was this wave of modern change coming. It's like, no, when we increase votes, a lot of people are still very conservative. And I mean, a great example here is when you look at the red wall, when you look at the 216 counties that are super rural in Texas, where Trump defeated Clinton by 46-point margin, Biden did only lose by 43%. But this is where it's just like, I mean, it is like if LA is Democrat, I mean, Texas rule is Republican dynasty, which is also just weird and crazy because, like, I mean, the obsession over these, I feel like policies for a lot of our rural, poor, low income white families, I feel what they're voting for is opposite to what they need, but that's just a whole nother podcast. But anyways, they gained 522,972 registered new voters since 2016. So not only did the cities increase voter turnout, these people went out and did their thing.
Yeah.
And that was a big, and you're probably going to we see that nationally of oh, snaps. Donald Trump added 5 million new voters who believed in him.
And a trend that we're seeing nationally, and so makes a lot of sense that we would see it in Texas as well, is that with COVID, the left and the Democrats pushed, we're not going to go door to door. We're not going to have these massive voter registration events. But with these smaller counties that up until really the last month have largely remained untouched by COVID, going out and knocking door to door wasn't as big of a deal, and it clearly paid dividends. In a state like Texas, which is one of the most restrictive in the country when it comes to how to register to vote, not going door to door and knocking is a great way to do that. Yeah. And where the Democrats push public health and public safety, this isn't a revolutionary thing that I'm saying. It's very factual. Yeah. The right continued to go out knocking on doors, registering people to vote, and it shows both in Texas, it shows nationally, as specifically in South Florida, especially. That's a massive hurdle for Texas Democrats to overcome that is only going to get more difficult as this Texas House is able to redistrict further and further. And gerrymandered districts exist in every state under both parties. If you want to see an incredibly egregious example of it, look up Texas 02 in in Houston, it is more than an hour from one side of that district to the other, and it essentially just runs along one street as it goes up and around Houston. We're only going to get more and more divided as this house is able to do whatever it wants with redistricting.
Yeah. And the other big, so if I was a 1.82 on local, I would say I'm a 1 on the state of Texas. Because then also the border counties, that was the other one. When you look at, Clinton won the border counties by 33% in 2016. Biden won them only by 17%. And that was,
I mean, Beto swept all of that. I mean, Beto cleaned up down there. And I think we were talking earlier off the air about how the Democratic Party has to reckon with, which is something that has been preached at them by the younger Democrats, that Latinos are not a monolith. What you may be doing in Arizona that worked out is not the same as what you need to be doing in South Texas and far West Texas. It's not what you need to be doing in South Florida. Like, these people are from different countries. They're not the same. Like, because I'm white, I'm not the same as a Canadian. Even though maybe a lot of more of my views line up with them. But I think that's where we obviously failed in Texas, is not being able to put together a message that appealed to them and not having the national support to do so. And I think that's what Beto and Julian Castro were really trying to hammer over the last month was, we're doing all we can down here. Like, we need some help with this messaging and with how we're getting our word out, or we're going to get cleaned up down here. And the Democrats did. Yeah, I think we'll see. I mean, there's that also talk that this could have been the backlash of Beto doing so well in Texas. And Republicans like, whoa, snaps, we actually got to bring it. So then they actually mobilized and did that. So it's going to be interesting to see because here's the promise of, it just depends what state Texas Democrats do, is if Trump goes away, the next hated people I feel are like that people can see, Ted Cruz, Abbott, we can create enemies in Texas and get a lot of people excited to go vote against the current Republican leaders. Well, I think one of the big issues is nationally, people looked at Texas and said, wow, they have a lot of fast growing cities. That's a positive thing. And really just assumed that naturally Texas would continue to go blue and didn't actually invest to protect against what you said of people who woke up because of how well Beto did. And it showed. We just sort of let Texas happen to see how it would pan out. And maybe that was their plan all along. They know they didn't need Texas, and the Biden campaign knew they didn't need Florida. And so they
put a lot of money there, though.
Yeah, they did. Well, Michael Bloomberg put a lot of money there. And so I think that might have just been part of the plan all along, was we're going to rally, rah, 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 act like we're trying and focused on Texas, but why are we going to invest time and extra money there? Because we know we don't need it. If we win Texas,
it's a wrap.
So I feel like that was maybe a bigger part of it, and speaks to issues with the Electoral College, which is an incredibly outdated system. Land doesn't vote, people vote, which I know has been a tagline that's been going around. But it's also not surprising that people who were more concerned with property being looted than people being murdered would value land over people's votes as well. But that's a whole nother conversation.
And I think Texas Tribune titled it really kind of what the reality is now, moving into also the national discussion is that, Texas is not purple. It's not blue. It's conservative. And that is, yeah. And I guess that's the, the Latino population is conservative, in a lot of ways, super traditional. And, I think you also have that scare of Austin cutting the police budget by a third. Like I think there's a lot of, keep California out kind of things as well that is playing in their favor as well.
Yeah. And I think that might have been part of the strategy was let's see where Texas actually is.
Yeah.
So that we know what we're working with rather than what Beto was able to do. Because that might have just been a generational race where, it happens once in a lifetime where someone comes in and is able to rally people the way that he was, and spark change the way he was.
Yeah.
But yeah, moving nationally.
Is Florida still a swing state, or are you going to just give it to them now? Yeah, because you're a Floridian. Is that what you guys call yourselves?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, nationally,
people are saying that Florida is not a swing state, but I still believe it is. But it does hinge on all of the different Latino populations there and how a message is crafted to each one of them individually, because Cubans are not the same as Venezuelans, are not the same as Mexicans. And I think that was a trend we saw nationally. The race has been called for Joe Biden. It looks like he is going to end up with the same margin of victory as Trump did over Hillary in 2016, which Trump himself and all of his cronies called a landslide. So we'll just use their language and call this a landslide victory.
I think it is, though. I mean, I think
almost 5 million popular votes.
Yeah. And then the Electoral College is going to showcase a landslide that was similar to what he got for Hillary.
Exactly. It's just the dynamic of it that made it feel closer than it actually was. And a lot of that started because Florida was one of the first places to report. Georgia came out looking not great.
Yeah.
North Carolina.
Pennsylvania.
Yeah, Pennsylvania. North Carolina came out not looking the way that we thought it would. The real glimmer of hope for Democrats as we went to sleep, if you did, on Tuesday night, was Arizona, and the AP and Fox probably prematurely calling it.
That was surprising.
It seems like they were comfortable and confident in the data that they had. At least Fox was. I think the AP rescinded their call on Wednesday or Thursday, but Fox held strong the whole time. Democrats were hoping to flip up to like 15 seats in the House. That didn't happen. The margin looks like it's only going to be D plus 8 or 9. And money was just mismanaged in the Senate races. Georgia over the next 2 months is going to be insane. Whether it feels insane in Georgia is one thing, but nationally focused on it, it's going to be insane.
Yeah.
Because right now, unless a miracle happens in Alaska, which there still is, apparently the Democrat running in Alaska is still remaining optimistic, but realistically, it's going to be 50 Republican, 48 Democrat going into the January 5th runoff for 2 Georgia seats. If both of those go Democrat, a lot could change in this country in the next 2 years. If both of those go Republican, we're just going to have a really crappy 4 years. And we're just going to keep going into this spin cycle of one candidate. People get pissed off at a candidate for president because he wasn't able to do anything. He wasn't able to do anything because different parties held the House and Senate. So then those flip the next election and we just go back and forth and back and forth.
Yeah.
The tiebreaker in the Senate is the vice president. So if it is 50-50, that essentially means it's 51-50 for the Democrats. But nationally for Democrats, it was definitely a disappointing election, especially in the Senate.
Yeah. Yeah, you looked at money, spending money doesn't show you're going to win.
Over $1 billion. And AOC has come out with some really great rhetoric over the last few days as people within the DCCC have sort of been attacking progressivism as like, you're the reason that we lost these campaigns. The people who AOC offered help to all of these candidates, only 5 of them took her up on that offer. All of them won. Anybody who signed on as running on the Green New Deal and Medicare for All won. But the way that Democrats did not live on Facebook, the way that Republicans have lived on Facebook, just meant that Democrats were shooting their message one way, but everybody who needed to hear it was behind them. Like, they were shooting a target 50 feet out, but everyone was just standing right behind their right shoulder and not hearing whatever they said.
Yep.
So, I mean, $100 million in South Carolina and $90 million in Kentucky, 2 seats we weren't going to win. Like, we know that. The disappointments really have to be North Carolina and Maine.
Yep.
2 seats
that we thought we had.
We really thought we had.
Iowa.
Yeah.
That was pretty cool.
But even Iowa is,
Yep.
it's one of those pipe dreams, you know?
For sure.
And there's a lot to be said about public polling and how that works. I'm not as down on the polls now that we've seen it play out.
Correct.
As a lot of people are. But if Maine had $100 million, if Tillis in North Carolina had $90 million, I think we really could have done some damage there.
Yeah. And so we're going to see, I mean, Georgia, I think what's going to be spent, what's going to be, I know there's even on the right side, they're already pitting some big money there. And I think my biggest takeaway with, again, going to all of this is this was a win for Biden. This was a loss for Trump. This was a win for Republicans and a loss for Democrats. That's kind of my big take. And then even as I would say a young progressive is me and your kind of POV, you know, it was like there's still an uphill battle it's a lot slower. I mean, we got to realize, you know, climate change and healthcare, a lot of that stuff, if we don't get Georgia, it's just going to be the same old, same old.
Yeah. And even Fox News showed a poll on Tuesday of their constituents on who thought that healthcare should be government organized. And it was over 80% of people.
Yep.
And then those people went and voted against that.
Yep.
Your vote has consequences, and we continue to reap the consequences of our votes, which does not make the U.S. a long-term power the way that it has been in recent memory.
Yeah.
We're leaving our people out to dry. And one quick note, I just got a text that Alex Trebek died.
Oh, man.
You know, he's been battling cancer for a long time. But
2020.
Yeah, man, like that's sad. Back to election talk, but I did want to just say and acknowledge that if Jeopardy continues on, it will never be the same. But man, that's a real bummer.
Yeah, I think it's kind of interesting that, you know, Jeopardy, you know, the host, you know, Trebek is, you know, I feel like that our country's in jeopardy of what we're actually, I mean, I think that's interesting. That's kind of how it feels. So yeah, I think looking at it though, my one interesting positive, because I know I always shat on white people all the time when I talk. The only people who declined in votes for Trump as a race and gender was white men. So white men decreased this election. 62% of white men voted for Donald Trump in 2016. 57% did in in 2020. But then all the other race and gender increased.
Yeah.
And so I thought, one, I just wanted to acknowledge like that's pretty neat. And I maybe even think that I don't know how much 5 million is, but that 5% shift, people talk about the Latino vote. Could it been
that
the
is
white man?
Yeah.
Could
it
it
be
be
a significant number?
Yeah. Could be
but
interesting.
To obviously push back on that, white men are not going to try and claim this election.
Yeah, for sure.
This election was on the backs of Black, Indigenous, people of color, especially Black women.
Yeah.
I mean, Detroit went 93% for Biden.
Yeah.
Philadelphia in these mail-in ballots was coming in over 90%.
Yeah.
Milwaukee. I mean, it's really incredible to see a group of people continue to show up for people that have generally ignored them. And I really, really hope that those of us who reap the benefits of that in some way can continue to push this party to focus on the things that especially Black women want to focus on. Because Stacey Abrams and co. in Georgia, the people up in Michigan, the people in Minnesota and Wisconsin, like they grinded hard, and they have been grinding hard for a very long time. And I mean, Trump would be president if it wasn't for them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it shows, I mean, again, only 8% of Black women voted for Donald Trump.
Yeah.
So that power is definitely where it is. And I think that's what's really exciting for Kamala Harris, our first woman, president is a Black woman.
Yeah.
I think that is a showcase of the hard work. Stacey Abrams adding the 800,000 new registered voters. I think it's super inspiring. And then going to the Latino coalitions in Arizona, there's definitely been a lot of work done. And it's interesting. It's going to be interesting to see what's sticky though.
Yeah.
Is the non-Trump hate, the Trump hate? Are they going to say, hey, I'm going to keep this momentum and continue to be civic citizens and continue to vote? Are people who voted for Trump radical lovers of Trump? Are they going to stick around when he's no longer doing this? I think that's going to be interesting because what will be, I can't imagine Biden doing another term. So like you said, I agree. I don't think Trump will legally be able to actually run again. So, what that looks like, it could be interesting.
Yeah. And if we're just thinking realistically about who the presidential candidate would be in 2024, Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio come to mind pretty quickly. I would be surprised, honestly, to see somebody outside of one of those two. Those guys are also very passionately hated and just as passionately loved. They don't have the bravado of someone like Donald Trump. And I think, and they're just good politicians, and they understand that they have to maintain a career, whereas Donald Trump is not. He feels the liberty to say whatever he wants to whomever he wants. So that's going to be the name of the game over the next 2 to 4 years. Is Kamala going to be the one running?
You also have to look at that. What I'm learning here is how afraid everyone is on the right of Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
The whole quote of she's the most left senator thing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, like, sure, let's say that she is. I mean, that doesn't surprise me. The majority of the Senate is right. And she's from California.
Yeah.
So like whippy-ki-yay, but also like if you want to go extremism and, she's the most left senator, the amount of more crazy extreme right senators we have outnumbers whatever fear you have of this woman. And I always try to tell Republican people, someone who sees himself as progressive, I look at Kamala and Joe as very centered people.
Oh yeah, I mean
Like-
the rhetoric around Kamala being so far left was obviously just fear mongering
Yeah.
in this election. If you look at her history, that is not
Yeah.
remotely reflective of who she actually is. In 4 years, would they push that same narrative? I don't know. I mean, probably a little bit, but not to the extent that they have. But I would say that the majority of the left was not super excited about. I would say the far left was not very excited about Joe and Kamala because there were much more progressive options out there. Even Stacey Abrams,
Yep.
For potential VP. So I
Watch our documentary this weekend, by the way. Highly recommend as the next step to what do you feel like what's to do next now that the election's over? Definitely check out the documentary.
All In, the Fight for Democracy, free
Yes.
on Amazon Prime.
Yes.
I think it's under an hour. Like
Yeah, it
basically-
was like an hour 40
okay.
actually. It's pretty
Oh,
long.
okay.
But it gives you a good history lesson of like voter suppression and how successful like we were getting
Yeah.
black governors, we were getting black politicians, and then Jim Crow happened, and like it's still real today.
Yeah. So that, I mean, that's going to be the name of the game for 2022 and 2024 is who can be stickier, who can increase turnouts in marginalized groups or unreached groups, who can get people to vote, who can get people that are 14 right now.
Yeah.
Or I guess technically 15 right now, but 14 as of October.
Yeah.
Who can get those teenagers passionate and really riled up behind their cause.
Yeah, and a lot of the reason why, a lot of reason why I say like the whole race thing and why I felt like this is a battle between white people is because if you just did the people of color votes,
Yeah.
the entire country's blue,
Yeah.
right? The entire country is blue. So granted, yes, we should always lead with a major minority coalition,
Yeah.
and obviously continue to lead it being a black woman,
Yeah.
because these are our strongest showcasers of people, really delivering gains.
Yeah.
But I think to me, when you look at why I said this was a battle of white people, it's because if you look at the coast, you have the aristocrat, degree holding, high income jobs, but they live in places where you got to realize 4 of every 10 Californian is a Hispanic person. So you have these like people who live in black and brown communities, have black and brown people in their lives. But then if you look at the other portion of the white population, Wyoming, Montana, Iowa, they might know 5
Yeah.
black or brown people and like could tell you all the people who've ever walked inside their house that's
Yeah.
black or brown. And so to me, the biggest separation, because is like, right, the majority of white people still voted for Donald Trump. And so, but that's where the coin flip is. That's where I think that is where the guard is, because Democrats are going to continue to get black and brown people especially if they put in Ted Cruz.
Yeah.
I mean, the Rubio thing might be a different story, but, and so I don't know. I think that is where I think I learned that he grew his base. 5 million more people voted for Donald Trump.
Yeah.
People grew his base. So then that told me is that we were always brainwashed to say, oh, we were looking at these voter turnouts like, oh, we're going to demolish, we're going to crush. And that was my culture shock. That was I literally like cried about it when like Tuesday came out and it was showing Trump kicking ass.
Yeah.
And even the Vegas odds were like minus 500,
Wish
minus
I would've
700,
taken that.
minus 700.
Yeah.
And this is where I was getting this cold reality of like, because it was always the excuse that we just didn't vote.
Right.
And it's like, no, that's not the case. Everybody voted and we are very 50-50. And I think that's the backlash of the only people, research shows the only people that feels comfortable sharing their views is left progressives, because it's most PC right now.
Yeah.
It's about race. It's about Black Lives Matter. It's about all these things. We are allowed to say whatever we want on social media. So you have this silent anti-woke, group
Yeah.
who then throws up and has an infection to like, well, now you're saying I'm a racist.
Yeah.
And now so I'm going to cancel out, and I'm now more hungry to
Yeah.
go Trump and not listen to this rhetoric over here. And so I think we all got to do, that's why I was trying to be nice on social media and telling all my people like, yo, the more you itch it and scratch at it, you're just going to, you're doing what Trump does, and you're never going to bring these people in. So how do we provide more inclusiveness to talk about race to maybe people who just feel like, oh, this is super dramatic. Everyone's being dramatic. And because those are the people who went out and vote for Trump still.
Yeah. I think that is accurate to a point. I wonder if those people don't feel comfortable sharing those views because they know that their views marginalize people. Like there's some level of like, oh yeah, my view makes your life harder. My view actually hates you.
But I think if you ask them that, they wouldn't see it as that's what they're doing.
Yeah.
They don't see themselves as racist.
Yeah.
They don't.
The way that I would push back on the conversation of race is that I think there has been a lot of opportunity, especially starting back this summer, where people have very calmly and politely said, I want to have a conversation with you. Let's educate on what race is. And the response, as we've seen from 70 million people, is no. Like, I'm comfortable with my views.
Yep.
I don't care to be educated on how they affect your life. And I even saw it from a Fort Worth pastor had a tweet go viral this week where he said very plainly, like, the spiritual platitudes of like, it's going to be what it is and God is in control, like, that belittles people's experiences. And the replies in that were, at least from what I read before I was just getting really frustrated, were, oh no, I tell people that, but I'm not belittling their experience. Like, you're literally saying, oh, I'm not listening to your experience. I'm going to keep saying what I'm going to say. And as somebody who does fall into the category of a white evangelical, to continue to see how ingrained that rhetoric is of, it doesn't, I don't want to hear what you have to say, even if it's presented in an incredibly polite and open and constructive way, tells me that the conversation, even though the door has been opened by a lot of people, the conversation isn't ready to be had, and people aren't open to that. And part of that might be because of how divided we are right now. But I feel like I have seen in ample spaces, here's a book to read, here's a podcast to listen to, here's an audio book, here's something to grasp onto.
Statistics.
Yeah. To not even challenge your view, but to just hopefully allow you to be educated on how your rhetoric is hateful towards other people. And the answer to that has been no.
Yeah. And I guess my gullibleness or innocence, optimist, whatever we want to call it, is I'm giving people who just, I don't know. I look at a bunch of white people who just don't hang out with black and brown people. It's literally like, it's just numb to them. They have no idea what it actually means. I agree. They should seek it, but they don't even realize that it's that important to seek. It's almost like they're just lost there. But then I also think, as much as we see the evangelicals do all that and create that, I do think that we don't do ourselves a justice to get to shape it enough for them to sit at the table with us.
Yeah.
Defund the police, right? You know, we are very radicalized sometimes to them, and we don't. And so much of so much, and that's why I'm always, a believer of centered journalism, or even trying to have a more centered language, is because I don't need to talk like people I already know who believes in Black Lives Matter. I don't need to talk. I don't need the people who believe in defund the police to believe in what I'm saying, because I already get you and we're on the same page.
Right.
But I need to talk in a way that is open enough to the other side where they're not scared to talk about these things with me.
Yeah.
And we don't have to do that, but this is a part of, politics is the greatest. It's a game of customer service.
Yeah.
And who do you want to, when you're renting a car, who do you want at the front desk? Mm-hmm. And how we pick those people and how those people talk it's a game of sales.
Yeah.
And we have to realize that. And we can't just be like, F these people. And, we're going to say things like this. That's very frightening to them,
Yeah.
And so that's just, I'm excited as people who live in Texas. Mm-hmm. We have to put into work, especially allies to Black people who should feel tired and exhausted from having to do it. But we should pick up that load to be able to have the sit down conversations with our moderate Republicans who might be able to see it a little more.
Yeah. And I think that having a president now who believes in science, knows that he's not a scientist, and knows to bring people around him. I'm optimistic that by March, we could be back living a much more normal life and actually get to have those conversations. Because I don't think people are trying to pick up extraneous Zoom calls with
totally
who, even if you're a friend, it's just not something that people are motivated to do right now.
Well, I don't know if you've seen Texas numbers. I don't think anybody's Zoom calling anymore.
Yeah, that's true.
We out here rocking. We out here living our best life.
Yeah.
People, Papa Do's is popping.
Yeah.
It is still going.
Yeah.
I'm like, man, it's Sunday morning. What you got a breakfast menu I don't know about? A red snapper Benedict I need to cook? What's going on?
And so hopefully that means that by March or April, we're looking like a lot of these countries that have been able to reopen. That's exciting because I think that opens the door for those conversations to actually happen.
Yeah, there's already he's already going to have a lot of things that the president did himself, executive orders. He's gonna swipe those. I mean, we're jumping back into the
hundreds of them.
Yeah. Parents, the Paris Climate Agreement. We got the DACA students and immigration. However, it's going to be interesting. It's just going to be interesting how this gets turned, because this man still has a Twitter and this man still can do what he does and knows how to rattle. He wins by us being divided. Yeah. No one else wins. He wins.
Yeah.
And if we can just understand that this is not a battle. And that's why when I talk about this, I talk about it as Trumpism against non-Trumpers. This is not about Democrats and Republicans until this thing is behind
bars.
Yes, it's behind bars, which is, I think, a great way to close it. And a lot of work to do. Kudos for Tarrant for going blue. Hope you guys are still excited to see that this is just the beginning. And it made me more fired up to realize the importance of having conversations like this with you, Jimmy. And hopefully for those as well who are listening, if you feel like this is helpful, please share with a friend. Tell them about what we do. Our goal is to provide news, trends, culture, and getting people who are ambitious about Fort Worth to think about everyone and think about where we're going. And hopefully when you make decisions as leaders and people, our perspectives and the thoughts and things we share with you help you make better decisions.
Yeah. A more informed city, county, state, country is a better city, county, state, country. And that's our goal here, is to help people be informed on things that you might miss. And we miss things.
Yes, we do. But
trying to create a space for people to learn about what is going on in our city is why we're here. And I'm excited to see where this conversation goes.
We got the mayoral election, May, right? May.
May.
So that's going to be on top. Like, how do we take the momentum from national election to now bringing it locally? Because that is where we need to really have impact in our city. So get ready for some news and updates from there, and keep your energy going for the local election next year.
Yeah. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.
Double tap.